If you get your ass in, you better get your ass out. Had Garrett been sipping on a Shiner Bock beer at the Stumblin' Goat Saloon, he might have enjoyed the melody. But the warning was no beer joint poetry dripping from the mouths of Sturgill Simpson or Robert Earl Keen. It was a little hard knocks wisdom imparted 5 years prior by a seasoned instructor at the DEA Academy in Quantico. A Georgia-born gunslinger named Joe Bob Dawson ended every tradecraft lesson and war story with one of several sayings. First among his favorites was, "I didn't get this old by accident," which was followed by a close second, "I want to meet Jesus, just not today." Either way, the message to his deep cover officers was clear. The kind of work they did was as dangerous as it gets. As a former Green Beret turned DEA special agent, Garrett had, over the years, become a devoted disciple of more than a few old hands who had been there, done that, bought the bloodstained t-shirt. And he treated their lessons like gospel. He'd been in a few tight spots more than once, and their wisdom had saved him on several occasions. Slowing his pace, Garrett dropped into the prone position and inched over a blanket of powdery snow to the edge of a crag overlooking the valley. Finding good cover behind the serrated stump of a fallen gray cedar, he lay flush against the cold granite, struggling to catch his breath as adrenaline surged and lactic acid pumped into his aching thighs. After a short rest, he rolled to his side, unzipped his brown Carhartt jacket, and jerked at its fleece lining to let a little cool air flow in. Garrett nudged the black Filson watch cap up on his forehead, raised the camera's viewfinder, and made a slight adjustment to the lens. Once the snow-capped mountain peaks were in focus, he shifted his gaze downward to a narrow but powerful mountain tributary. The meadow lining its banks was emerald green, reminding him of photos he'd seen from Ireland and Scotland. But the crown jewel of the whole view was the sky-colored water swirling over jagged gray fangs of rock. The image was surreal, like some lost valley from an ancient storybook world. In fact, it would have been a postcard-worthy shot were it not for the 24 heavily armed tangos bunched around at the creek, about 60 yards below his position. He didn't recognize them, but they were dressed in black shalwar kameez and carried Kalashnikov rifle variants with polymer stocks. Their modern rifles and tactical chest rigs made them look more like paramilitary troops than straight-up Taliban or ISIS. Of course, it was growing nearly impossible to identify anyone by guns and gear. Since the pullout of NATO forces, terrorist organizations, drug runners, and warlords were thriving, in large part due to proceeds from the opium trade. For that reason, Garrett and his DEA team were deployed to Afghanistan. The jihadi movement had grown bigger than ideology. It was about money and power, and selling the drug large-scale bought dump trucks full of both. The call to morning prayers caught Garrett's attention, and he watched the tangos drop to their knees on small maroon rugs laid out on the chalky stone. With heads wrapped in black turbans, they bowed and rose, mumbling in a low, steady cadence that carried on the wind. The hunter in Garrett liked the sound cover provided by the gale, but the rest of him cursed the damn bite of it. Garrett adjusted the lens, zoomed in on the creek, and captured a few photos of weapons and equipment. There were 3 Toyota Hilux pickups and a red Nissan 4x4 pickup with a Dushka machine gun mounted over the cab, but nothing out of the ordinary for a warlord's convoy. Several more snaps with the camera, and he checked his 6. No one in sight, but a deep uneasiness set in. A burn in his stomach he recognized from over a decade of war zone tours and undercover assignments. Garrett didn't normally travel alone, but the rest of his unit had relocated from Camp Savo to another forward operating base, Fob, southwest of Kandahar. This elite squad of expert counter-narcotics and counter-terrorist fighters made up of former operators from Army Special Forces, Rangers, Navy SEALs, and Force Recon Marines had shifted their efforts to tackle opium production in the fields. Garrett was left standing to continue running their confidential sources. Cultivation and trafficking were 2 separate parts of the same serious problem, and DEA headquarters didn't want either getting worse. Unfortunately, Washington's allocation of resources wasn't consistent with its expectations. He and his team did the best they could with what they were given, but it was only a matter of time before something big fell through the cracks. At the sound of a cranking engine,